everyone for joining us. I am so excited to welcome you to our inaugural event of Breaking Bread in McLean County, a series that is dedicated to the immigrant experience and their stories. What pushes people to leave their homes and what pulls them into new and often very strange lands? What kinds of relationships are forged in these spaces and what tensions arise? We will be exploring these and other questions in the context of food, hence Breaking Bread, as a metaphor of a common staple we share across cultures, while also recognizing important and distinct variation.
So it is, in fact, around 1870s when we have the first record of Latinos in McLean County. And here we have documentations of Latinos working the railroads, and I'll just pull up this one census record from 1880, and you'll see here Francis Anthony, right? And Francis Anthony works in the railroad shop, and he is a Spanish speaker, the first Spanish-speaking resident that's recorded in the census here. So here in a 1980 article, owner of the Mexican Border Cantina, his name was William Robinson, and I'll quote him in this article you see on the left, normal restaurant serves Mexican food. He says, "Mexican food is going to be the food of the 80s. People are getting tired of hamburgers. You'll find a full-service Mexican sit-down restaurant in Bloomington Normal in the next year or so."
No sé, como un año, un momento en esta vida profesional cuando por fin podía como respirar y decir, ok, estamos bien, no tengo que preocuparme como antes.
Sí, cuando mis hijos empezaron a tener sus propios trabajos y como que ya hicieron su familia y aquí seguía bien el negocio, la clientela nos ha apoyado muchísimo.
Sí.
Entonces yo sentí que ya había valido la pena mi esfuerzo, mi sacrificio de cuando empezamos, que batallé con los niños.
It was very difficult because you'd see them try so hard to make sure that we didn't lose our roots. So Spanish in the household, every chance they had to save money to take us to Mexico. But it was really easy for us to just sway away from our roots. It was really easy for us to adapt our American ways because that's all we were, surrounded by, and especially up in LaSalle, Peru. But luckily, because of how big the immigrant population was up there, we did get to meet a lot of Hispanics. And so instead of going to parties with all Americans, we'd go with all the Mexicans. And they mostly try to do that for us, but every now and then, of course, because of school, they also, encouraged us to participate in what school activities we had before the restaurant. After the restaurant, it was really difficult.
The woman you see on the right is Mary Motherway O'Neill. She brought her 9 children over at the time of the famine. She's my great-great-grandmother, and it's from her stalwart efforts to resettle her family into McLean County that much of my interest in history stems. The group who came in the 1870s to 1900 were Scots-Irish agricultural workers. These folks were coming up to help at harvest time when it was time to shuck corn, to help at planting time. So they were seasonal, very seasonal in the sense of when their work was under demand. And when they were not, their work was not under demand and they needed to move on to the next job, they were considered to be hobos or tramps. And they were subject to police harassment because it's interesting, the popular image, they were a person that you needed when you needed them, and when you didn't need them, you saw them as a threat to your family and a threat to your personal wealth because they'd rob you. So it was just, they were it was like a day and night, almost a psychosis of American society about these traveling agricultural workers. Now, a person whose family experienced much of this is Bill Givens. And one of the things that we need to think about while we're talking to Bill is that recipes and cooking you borrow from your new kin, your new relatives, people, your families you marry into, from your neighbors. That's where our foodways come from. Musicians do the same kind of a thing. Musicians borrow tunes as well as musical styles. And Bill will be playing a blues tune. And I want you to understand that blues is a fusion music. It's a fusion of African-American use of European chords and African rhythms.
It is amazing to me that when I came to this community in 1990 to pursue a college education, there were only 3 Congolese families, including me and my brother. Today, it is believed that there are somewhere around 300 individuals of Congolese origin in the community.
Caterpillars are a delicacy.
You like caterpillar.
My son-in-law loves them.
But it's very good because it's a lot of protein. It's very good.
My story is different. I was working as an accountant back home. I first worked with Mobil Oil, and then around 2002 came the merger between Mobil Oil and Exxon. This is where we have now the new company named ExxonMobil. And I think after here, ExxonMobil decided to leave the Congo because they couldn't get along with the new government. This is why I also, when Exxon left the Congo, I decided also to try that experience, because I said, okay, let's try the United States. And I was lucky, the results for the lottery, the immigration lottery, came and I was selected. This is how I get here.
Very hard to get here without that.
It was very, very difficult when I got in Urbana. Back home I was used to work in a corporate setting, and my first job that was waiting for me in Urbana was in a heavy factory job, and where you have to work all night, standing in hot and dusty place.
That's the story of a lot of Congolese professionals.
Yeah, that's the story of most Congolese.
So the question, why Bloomington? The answer to that question is coal. So in 1867, the McLean County Coal Company opened up. It was the area's largest mine. There were a number of other smaller mines in the area. But the McLean County Coal Company was started by the Stevenson brothers, including Adlai Ewing I, right? So Stevensonville totaled 46 acres of 3-room, 1-story, quote, working men cottages. Now by 1881, we saw a total of more than 60 cottages built in the area. But we want to remain cognizant that simply, following annexation did not mean that Stevensonville was afforded the same amenities and utilities that the rest of Bloomington was, and that took time. So it wasn't until 1910 that a water main direct from the city reached Stevensonville. We'll note as well that most Stevensonville lots are deep, so they could accommodate large gardens. They could accommodate animals, maybe chickens or even a cow, to help feed the community internally.
Well, A.G. Erickson was my great-grandfather on my father's side, and he is from Sweden. The Erickson grocery store was very, very important to West Siders. And as we all know, Many years ago, before the advent of great big huge grocery stores, neighborhood grocery stores were the lifeline for people. And I remember as a small child, about 5 years old, going into the store with my father. And I remember lutefisk. As a small kid, you know, kids can be pretty picky with foods. I loved it. And you hear people say, oh, it's the most awful stuff. Well, your people didn't know how to fix it. And
So the Kickapoo Algonquin tribe, we're a woodland tribe from the Great Lakes. So some of the history in the books aren't correct, and none of them were written by Kickapoos. So I think some of the history that is going to be told today and in some of these slides are some things that you probably haven't heard or seen before. So that's part of us preserving our way of life and dealing with the assimilation of colonialism back. And that's when some of the historical trauma comes into play, because some people don't understand that we're taught that way, and it's still taught here very much that what our people had to go through. I mean, our people talk about it all the time, even from stories from their grandparents to their grandparents, basically our ancestors, what they had to go through. So Matiqua is how you say corn. And this video that you're about to watch is how we kind of prepare corn. Up there you see it boiling. And then in this video, you're going to see them actually spooning the corn. And this is just Indian corn. So this was passed down through the generations of our people. This video was given to me by one of our elders, and it just shows a group of them spooning corn.
This is an aerial view of Google Earth of the Woodard, Eunice Woodard and Ardell Woodard family estate. At one time, it was about 300 acres. Right now, it's about 187. My grandparents, they basically farmed about 300 acres until my grandfather passed in 1967. They farmed cotton, sweet potatoes, corn, peas, cucumbers, watermelon, and other crops, including sugar cane, which they also made cane syrup. And of course, they raised chickens, hogs, and processed beef. And I remember a story that's been passed down, and my dad shared with me that they would sit around these wooden benches at the house and have a dinner, and everything would be there. And my grandfather would proudly say, everything on this table came from this land, except for the salt. So collards, right? That's my favorite. Like other greens and peas, collards represent a critical aspect of African-American heritage and culinary tradition. Personally, my favorite is turnip greens, but you know, you can mix a little mustards in there too, but I just like to hear all the different stories from people, because what I find is a recurring theme, a common thread is when we are growing collard greens here on the west side and neighbors come by or they get involved or they get a plot and start growing, everybody always talks about what their grandmother used to do.
Well, hello there. My name is Willie Holton Halbert. I'm the author of Cooking with Love. One of my favorite things to do in the world is cooking. And this is my sous chef, my assistant, who is my daughter, Brooklyn. Hi. Brooklyn Kathy, say hi.
Hi.
You like cooking?
Yes.
What do you enjoy most about cooking?
That you get to do it with just your family, and you get to make good food.
And you get to do what after you make it?
Eat it.
You get to eat it. That's what it's all about.
And I think, of course, we associate things like hot dogs and things like sausages with German cuisine for very good reasons. But there's a thing about cuisine that we have to really think about, and it has a lot to do with many of us who live in the Midwest, that food really is a type of deep memory. Well, market gardening is a piece that we have not left behind. It's a piece that actually we've regathered.
Long ago, it was my grandparents' time, but they came in the probably mid 1800s with the Lutheran immigrants. But it was about having your own piece of land and your own food security. I mean, everyone had different reasons, as you say, push and pull, the immigrant experience. They got their 160 acres there in Iroquois County, so not exactly McLean County, but not too far away and similar in some ways. And their farm was biodiverse and what we would call organic and sustainable, because that was what farms were. We're all about, having fresh taste. And now we know that taste equals nutrition. And we know about biodiversity and how that is an insurance policy because all your eggs aren't in one basket. So we're practicing similar thing on our farming and being direct to consumer, getting your stuff to either a very local market or the Chicago market. And oddly enough, what they were doing back then is exactly what our family is kind of doing now.
And coming to the United States, I was aware that I would miss my hometown, people, language, the smell of Indian soil, food, and also the air. As soon as you land in India, you get this smell and then you're like, oh, I'm home. People suggested that I should bring a few Indian clothes along with me, stainless steel utensils like plates, tumblers, a pressure cooker to make dal, a rolling pin, a garam masala box, and lots of various spice powders that were pre-mixed to make South Indian foods. So this is my garam masala box. So garam means heat or hot, and masala means spices. So my garam masala box. When you look at people's garam masala boxes, you know where they are, which region of India they are from. So most of the Indian migration to McLean County happened in the late 60s due to State Farm, Illinois, Illinois State University, and Illinois Wesleyan University, and Clinton Power Plant. Men were highly educated and women were mostly homemakers. I visited a few senior uncle and aunties' homes and recorded conversations on my phone. And I wanted to keep this raw, bare, and intimate. If it was a studio-like setup, I was concerned that people would feel like they had to be their best.
The other important effect of this practice of going to people's house, a different house every Sunday, brought that community really together. Everybody felt at home at everybody else's house, to the extent where my wife knew exactly all the ingredients, where they are kept in everybody's house to make tea. This camaraderie really is a characteristic of this community. It would be very hard to find this any other place. Yeah.
When I came to North America, I was in Toronto University because I went to University of Toronto. Over there, they have like a lot of Japanese people and then big restaurants. So I could eat normal sushi, like which you was seeing the slides. But then when I get a job here, I thought, like, oh my God, I can't have any more sushi. I expected that. But then Jim said, like, there is sushi. Yeah, we can go. And then he took me to the this kind of this places, right? Restaurant, sushi restaurants. Then when I saw sushi all like this, can you see this is a steak sushi? And then this is like a kind of Hawaiian hat kind of wearing things and lots of tempura around here. And I thought, what? This is really what? Like a cocktail kind of thing. And not only that, this is like a hamburger sushi, they say. And this is like a burrito sushi. Yes, we do have a hand-rolled one, but this really looks like a burritos. I don't know what is different about it, but it's different. When then I thought how it's different. My sister said when I was in Japan, I was talking about it, what kind of sushi I made it for my friends in America. She said, Nobuko, please don't tell them this is sushi. This is at least not a Japanese sushi. Maybe you can say Californian invasion, not ours. Please don't say that kind of thing. She was really, really upset about it.
So as probably many of you know, and we're basically being anthropologists here and using pseudonyms in all the things we're talking about. A restaurant that we'll call the Grand Kitchen started in 1921 here in Bloomington Normal, one of the first Asian restaurants in the Midwest, even before Chicago. I mean, there's some debate about whether or not it was the first or not. The building lasted until 2017, 2015. This restaurant, under other management, of course, is still existing under different auspices, but they were the ones that first brought Asian food to McLean County, to Bloomington Normal. And Chinese food, there were other Chinese food restaurants came for a while and were ubiquitous for quite some time. And while I'm at it, I want to make a shout out to the McLean County Museum of History. They have a marvelous resource for anybody interested in food. They have a collection of menus that go back to 1936 from all different kinds of places. I don't know when it actually stopped, but I think it's 2016, but there may be more. But this is a marvelous resource for anybody who wanted to do some work about food in McLean County.
My grandfather, Mariano Capodice, he was born outside of Palermo, Sicily, in a little town called Termini, which was coastal. And he first emigrated to the United States in 1899. He came through Ellis Island. He was 7 years old, and he came alone with supposedly a note in his pocket of the name of the relatives from Cleveland who were going to meet him in New York and take him back to Cleveland. That apparently did happen. I'm sure that he was taken care of by some of the women on the boat and transport. It was common for Italians to be involved in the produce industry. That was one of the businesses that was which was largely Italian.
I think that you'll see as this video goes on, this cooking demonstration, that there may be some Italian Americans out there that would look at this and say, well, that's not a traditional ingredient, or that's not a traditional ingredient. But I think that one of the things that's important to recognize is that the evolution of what we think of as Italian American cooking is really an amalgamation of several different regional styles. My dad says that his sauce wasn't the same as his mother's sauce. My sauce is definitely not the same as my father's, but there's been sort of a building on these flavor components and traditions that have become the kind of the fabric of our family's sauce.